Welcome to Hamilton Works. I'm your host, Al Lutchin, and we're going to be talking about health and safety in the workplace in the first half of the show, and then executive coaching and how that can benefit you in the second half. And with us today is Dr. Rachel Carson, who's a family chiropractor, and Mr. Chris Leddy, who is a specialist with the Canadian Centre for Occupational Health and Safety. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. Rachel, tell us about your clinic here in Hamilton, the new clinic that's, I guess, offering complimentary chiropractic service.
That's right. It's located at the Hamilton Urban Core Community Health Center on Rebecca Street. It's been open since September 7th, and it's a group of 20 chiropractor volunteers who are all working together really to eliminate barriers to access for health care for people in the Hamilton community.
Now, how important is the whole issue around health care and in particular back pain for us? I understand it's a leading cause of people being off work, which is not a good thing for either the employee or the employer.
That's right. Low back pain is a very common problem in our workforce. After the common cold, it's actually the thing that keeps people absent from work the most often. And it can be very devastating for people who have had an injury and are off work, and it really affects their whole quality of life.
Now, I'm very interested to hear a little bit more about the clinic that's going on in Hamilton. How did you come to pick Hamilton, and how can people get involved with it?
Sure. I don't know. I think Hamilton was a logical choice. One of the founders, he works here in Hamilton in Westdale, Dr. Callum Peaver, and he had some contacts with people at the Hamilton Urban Core Community Health Center, and so it just became a sort of logical spot. There is one other free clinic in Ontario located in London, and I think that was sort of the basis for our model. So it's a group of volunteer chiropractors, and really any chiropractor who's interested can come and join us. It's not just people from the Hamilton area, Oakville, Burlington, Georgetown, and towards Niagara. People are coming from all over.
And what kind of hours do you have?
We're open every Friday from 12 to 2 for the public. So anyone can come. They just come in. We start out, we do an examination. We explain chiropractic, what it is, and if people consent to have chiropractic care, then we go from there. And every week it's a rotating basis of doctors, so people just have to be prepared to have a different chiropractor each week, but the care is always excellent.
And do people just call into a phone number, or they got to go to a website, or how does that work?
Nope, they don't need to make an appointment. It's drop-in, so they just have to show up sometime between 12 and 2 and just be prepared to wait. Sometimes there's a bit of a lineup, but we do try to get people through fairly quickly.
And so are you finding that people aren't taking good care of their backs, and this is causing all kinds of issues?
It's not a question of not taking care of the back. It's just that as a society, there's a lot of things that are set up to kind of have us have back problems. So we spend a lot of time sitting down. We spend a lot of time in our cars. There's a lot of miseducation about what to do, how to perform at work, how to perform your daily living tasks that can lead to back injury.
Well, Chris, let's bring you in on the conversation. Rachel was talking about that whole business about we don't quite know how to handle ourselves sometimes at work, or even riding in a car maybe for 7 or 8 hours. So tell us your perspective on this from an occupational health and safety specialist.
Well, musculoskeletal disorders, which includes back pain or injuries to the musculoskeletal system, are a major issue in Canada and in Ontario. The WSIB states that about 40% of lost time injury claims are from musculoskeletal injuries. So this is a huge problem within Ontario.
And why is it Ontario? Is it because of our manufacturing base, or is it an educational issue? What do you think?
It's not just Ontario. This is a major issue across Canada and North America. So musculoskeletal injuries in general are a very, very relevant issue to workplace safety.
And of course that impacts on employee engagement and impacts on productivity and all of that bad stuff, right?
Absolutely. It sort of impacts everything. You know, when someone has a workplace injury like that, it affects not only the workplace with the employee and employers, making money financially. It costs the workplace insurance system a lot of money to compensate these injuries. And it costs employers a lot in lost time with workers and productivity, it also has a big impact on the workers' lives. Workplace injury can be very detrimental to someone's well-being in general and their overall wellness.
And now, what about prevention? How do we prevent back injuries from happening?
Well, prevention is actually very important. In Ontario, the employer is required to take every reasonable precaution to ensure the safety of workers in the workplace. And so what they need to do is implement a workplace health and safety program. In terms of musculoskeletal injuries, this means that they should identify and assess hazards in the workplace, develop and implement controls that address those hazards, and then follow up, right? So, they should be doing things like workplace inspections to identify risk factors. A good example is workers who have to do lifting, making sure that they're using good form and assessing the risk factors like the weight of the load, the body position when they're doing lifting, the amount of repetition that they have to do, right? And then if they notice anything that's a potential hazard to a worker, they need to develop and implement controls that address it, right? They should also be training workers on those controls as well as their managers and supervisors.
Now, what kind of sort of core issues do you see? What's the common sort of top 3 problems in the workplace today, if I can put it that way?
Well, that's a good question. They're as diverse as Canadian workplaces, right? So anything from, like I mentioned, lifting is very common. Today, with the increased pervasiveness of computers and information technology in the workplace, you can start to see office ergonomics, which is a big issue. So things like carpal tunnel, repetitive use from people mouse clicking, or things like that.
Yeah, so the modern day digital world is probably going to have a different impact on people.
Well, it can change things because you have issues with extended periods of sitting, people having to maintain body positions, not moving, these sorts of things can all have an impact on your body.
Is it a good idea to take sort of, just a short break for even just stand up and stretch?
It's a very good idea.
Yeah.
On our website, we actually promote several different stretches and things you can do to help keep active in the workplace. And we strongly recommend that workplaces try to implement a wellness program that can help keep employees active and engaged.
Rachel, I know you want to say something.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say that what we know from doing research on it is that when somebody gets injured at work, if they were in poor condition or had poor health before the injury, it will take them longer to get back to work than somebody who had good health and was in good condition before their injury. So it really the onus is on employers if they want to not only prevent the injuries, but also if someone does get injured, to make sure that they're coming back to work fairly quickly, is to have a wellness program in place to make sure that their employees are healthy on a day-to-day basis.
Now, the whole notion of wellness programs is something sort of new that we're hearing more and more now,
Yeah.
and it's becoming very important. Just tell us a little bit about how you see a wellness program, working.
I think that it's an education thing, and there has to be engagement by the people, the workforce. So that it has to be convenient for them, and it has to inform them they need to be seeing it as giving them a service, and it's got to really work to improve their overall quality of life. So we're not just helping them feel better at work, but we're really helping them feel better on a day-to-day basis for all of the activities that we're doing, because that's how they'll get engaged, so that it's really making them feel better every day.
Now, you talk about, you guys have a slogan about the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, so this is a preventative sort of idea, in the sense that pain is really only a small percentage of what is actually going on in the body's nervous system. So maybe less than 20% of what we actually are experiencing is pain. So that means that our body can be affected, our nervous system is affected before we even know it, because pain is the last thing to appear and it's the first thing to leave. But what you have is everything else that's going on under the surface, all of your other systems that are affected by problems with your nervous system.
And you talked about the nervous system and how all that ties into that. What can people do to sort of, monitor the nervous system, if you like, from an average person's point of view, and stay ahead of that issue?
Right. So obviously, chiropractic is a really great way to be doing that. We're really specialists trained to, what we're looking for is problems with the spine. The spine is where your nervous system is located in addition to your brain. So if there is a problem with the level of the spine, it's going to impact your nervous system, which is your information highway. So everything is coming from the brain, going to the body, coming from the body, going back to the brain. So you'll have an impact at that level, and it's going to be an interruption of information, and that's where you eventually get the pain. And so we need to really, that's what we do as chiropractors, is make sure that the spine is working correctly so that the nervous system can function optimally.
Chris, I would imagine that back injuries are a very sort of frustrating thing to have to deal with, both from the individual's perspective and the employer's perspective, because it can be sometimes long-term and repetitive in nature, or chronic, can't it?
Absolutely. Some injuries can be very devastating to workers, both if it's, it can be from a single event or from long-term repetitive use.
Now, what about particular professions and occupations? Are some professions more susceptible to others? Like, for example, I'm just thinking of construction workers and or truck drivers, long-haul truck drivers. What kind of things can you suggest around that?
Well, it can really depend. Obviously, with different jobs, even different jobs within an industry can have very different hazards. So what the employer really needs to do, or the workplace in general, is identify those hazards. So doing things like an inspection and a job hazard analysis, where you break down the tasks that a worker is doing, and then try to assess the hazards and control them.
Yeah, so it's a good idea, I guess what I'm hearing you say is take the time to assess the situation and avoid a lot of other potential issues downstream.
Absolutely, and that's also where the prevention as well as workplace training comes in. So workers are working their job all day, every day, right? They know their tasks very well, so it's very important to train them to identify the hazards that may be there and what to do if they do see one. So, for example, they should know that they have to report it to their employer and their joint health and safety committee so that they can then come in and do this assessment and implement those controls.
Rachel, is there enough education in our school system about what we're talking about?
Probably not. One of the first things that we tend to cut back on is things like physical education and health education, and it's really important to get kids having healthy habits as early as possible. I know the chiropractic associations, we have programs about backpack safety, things like that. So educators can start looking at that early. Colleges, when they're training people for specific trades or specific jobs, need to be training them correctly and making sure that when they go to start their jobs, they're not setting themselves up for injuries.
Yeah, so if we get kind of trained and get that ingrained, right from the beginning, before we graduate, then you're kind of, out there looking for that and trying to avoid those issues that can really impact, long term.
Right.
Now, what about demographics? What do you find? As far as sort of people who are getting injured, sort of, maybe in their 40s or 50s or 20s or 30s, and how does that then compound into the treatment process?
So back pain is prevalent across the entire population. There isn't a specific age group that has more back pain or less back pain. What we find is the types of injuries tend to change. So when you're younger, in the 20 to 40 age group, your spine is moving more, your discs are a little bit more mobile, and you're actually more at risk to have a disc herniation than someone who is over 50. Things are already starting to, the movement's slowing down, and there we're looking more at a joint dysfunction or arthritis and things like that. So back pain is prevalent for everybody. It's just the conditions that we'll see that can change.
And what about sporting injuries? When we're young, we're out playing football or hockey or soccer or whatever, and we think we're kind of invincible.
Right.
And then 10 or 15 years down the way, that these problems start to impact us.
That's
So
right.
talk to us about sporting injuries and how we can avoid that.
So it does all come back to prevention again. Every day, in our regular lives, we're always facing challenges. The external environment is always going to make us slip and fall, trip us up. We're going to drop something. And in children, yes, they can walk it off, but they're walking it off and then their body is learning to compensate for that injury. And so the body can compensate for that injury, but has it fixed the problem? It's just made them forget about it. And so chiropractic care for children is just as important as for adults, because they will respond very quickly, and we're going to prevent problems long term by catching it early. So for parents who have kids, especially kids in competitive sports, during their season they should be seen regularly. For other kids, once a season is normally good to go in for checkups and just make sure, especially when they're learning to walk, ride a bike, all of those sorts of things, and slips and falls are common.
Chris, from an employer point of view, is it expensive to put these processes in place, or is it just good, simple diligence to do it?
Well, I mean, it's always good business to do it. You want to invest in your workers, right, and make sure that they're trained. It's also implementing an occupational health and safety program and addressing hazards in the workplace is also a legal requirement in Ontario. So there is a compliance perspective. But these types of injuries and, health and wellness can affect employee engagement as well as productivity.
Yeah,
so, there is certainly a business case for, health and safety and prevention within the workplace.
Yeah, you were talking about just a little bit earlier when we started off the show about, how this is becoming a growing issue. And I'm just wondering, can you reflect on that a little bit? You were saying like it's right across North America. Is that the result of downsizing and people having to do more work? Is it just a result of people not paying close enough attention, or what do you think's going on there?
Well, I don't want to make any vast generalizations. There's a lot of people working in Canada, North America, and Ontario, and musculoskeletal injuries are certainly one of the largest. Like I said, they're about 40% of all lost time claims. That's spread across all different industries, all different types of jobs and stuff. So there's many different reasons on why that's happening.
People tend to just have more health issues outside of work, and if they have health issues outside of work, they're going to bring that to work and put themselves more at risk for having an injury in the workplace because of whatever may already be going on. So it's really important that they be healthy in a general way, in a wellness perspective, so that they're not bringing those sort of problems to work. So employers need to think also about what's going on at home, accommodate flexible hours for families, and try to minimize the stress and things like that.
That's
big issue.
That's a very good point. A person's life doesn't end at 5 o'clock when they leave work. What happens in the workplace and what happens at home are not always completely separate things. So it's something that should be accounted for, and that's where some of these wellness, health and safety planning and prevention can really help.
That's excellent. Well, thank you both.
Thank you.
Very informative, and we'll all be healthier and happier now.
I hope so. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Dr. Rachel Carson and Mr. Chris Leddy from the Canadian Centre for Occupational Health and Safety with us. We'll be back. More on Hamilton Works and Cable 14 right after this. Welcome back to Hamilton Works. I'm your host, Al Lutchin, and we're going to be talking about employee engagement and executive coaching and how they both work together. And our guest is Carmela Quiote Hooper, who is a consultant with Career Compass Canada. Welcome, Carmela.
Thank you for having me.
Let's talk a little bit about employee engagement. We're hear a lot about that today. And tell us, sort of what is employee engagement and the importance of it.
Employee engagement. Well, the importance of it, I guess, when you really look at it, is an engaged employee base means a retained employee base. Corporations see their employees staying longer, being more engaged within their organization, happier employees. That's all part and parcel of employee engagement.
And of course, retention is a big piece of that.
Yeah, you see very few, you see the numbers drop considerably when you have an engaged workforce.
And how does coaching, sort of help out with employee engagement? And first of all, maybe talk to us a little bit about coaching and the importance of it.
Oh, coaching. Coaching is very important, and I believe, and many of my colleagues do, it's not so much corporation and employee, it's manager and employee. There's the link. And when you get a coaching environment between manager and employee, you've hit the jackpot, because once an employee sees that their manager is attentive to them, is listening to them, wants to know about their concerns, and is helping them and is assisting them, then they become engaged, they want to stay longer, and then there's a common ground. And a culture like that is an excellent culture within an organization.
Do we do enough coaching?
Absolutely not. As far as we see, well, I do see, I'm going to track back here. I do see that organizations are changing, but there's still many cultures out there that still have this top-down type of coaching mentality, and it doesn't work. It really doesn't work, and then you start to see the employees start to leave, and your percentage in turnaround starts to grow. I like to call it a in-the-moment type of coaching for managers, and managers who become coaches in the moment with their clients, with their employees, tend to get a better workforce, a creative workforce, an engaging workforce, a workforce that stays longer. It's a win-win on both sides.
Is it because managers today are just so they're just so task-driven and so bottom-line driven that they're busy doing the reports for the boss and busy trying to keep their own desk cleared and kind of forgetting about the people who are making it all happen?
Well, very much so. After 2008, and we started to see the decline and the losses in jobs, more people were there were less people in organizations doing more work. And what happens? Stress increases. So the availability to do that type of one-on-one coaching with your client or with your staff, excuse me, I keep calling them clients, but with your staff is very difficult. Finding that time is very difficult. But I have to admit that I want to go back a little bit here. When I had a very great opportunity while going through certification, when I was learning to coach, you have to acquire hours, and I was given the great opportunity to do my coaching hours within the corporation I was working. I worked with managers and directors, and I gave them tools to learn about how to coach in an open environment. I was working at the time in the financial district in downtown Toronto, and the culture is very much a get the job done, get it done as quick as you can, but make sure it's accurate. And so there's a high level of stress, not only for managers, but for employees. So I worked with them, and we saw a huge turnaround in employees who started to become engaged in what they were doing and were seeing that their manager was very engaged in what was going on and wanted to know more, and they had a free and open forum for speaking. So the culture started to change, and it became a very good environment for the individuals and the managers and directors involved.
Well, let's talk a little bit about one-on-one coaching, which is what you have a very high level certification for. and you know, phenomenal background in human resources.
Thank you.
And I know you worked very hard on this certification. Let's talk about you know, who benefits from coaching. I know it started out being called executive coaching, but it's really not executive coaching anymore. It's used from senior level management right down to frontline staff now.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Everybody in corporations out there can use coaching, from the admin staff right up to executives. It's not so much anymore just an executive coaching culture that we try to facilitate out there with our clients. Everybody is available to have coaching.
And so it would be a good idea if somebody felt they wanted some professional development or wanted to, was being prepared to go into a new job, a higher level job. It would be a good idea maybe for them to ask for coaching.
Absolutely. There's a lot of people who are going through transition within their own organization,
Right.
whether it's an advancement or you know, more responsibility. Don't be afraid to ask. Ask your supervisor, your manager, your executive, whoever you report to, is there a possibility of getting some coaching? Because coaching can help in those areas. I work with a lot of my clients, you know, through career transition, changing in their position, their jobs, and they need that kind of support.
Excellent, excellent. Now, if anybody wants to get a hold of us, they can go through our website, careercompasscanada.com.
Absolutely.
And get a hold of yourself, and you can have a private, confidential discussion with them.
Absolutely.
Carmelo, thank you so much. Very informative.
You're welcome.
And all the best. And that's Hamilton Works on Cable 14. I'm your host, Al Lutchin. Thank you for watching.